Some engines never made magazine covers, yet could have rocked the entire industry, if only they'd been given the chance. The Chevy 292 and Ford 300, seemingly just truck and commercial vehicle engines, came dangerously close to redefining American performance. But instead of being celebrated, they were quietly held back by the very companies that built them. What if I told you these humble truck engines could have revolutionized American automotive performance? If you think these inline-sixes were just about durability and fuel economy, you haven't heard the whole story. Today, we'll uncover one of the most calculated acts of performance suppression in American automotive history, and why these engines still stand as underground icons of forgotten power. Amid the muscle car boom of the 1960s, when V8s dominated headlines with raw power and speed, two engines were born with a very different mission: the Chevrolet 292 and the Ford 300. Both were inline-six workhorses designed to power heavy-duty vehicles, trucks, vans, and mid-size commercial fleets. The Ford 300 debuted in 1965 and became the trusted heart of the F-Series for over 3 decades. Meanwhile, Chevy's 292 arrived in 1963 as an evolution of GM's 235 straight-six, quickly becoming a cornerstone in medium-duty platforms. Unfortunately, branded as truck engines, their real potential was buried beneath the towering legacy of their V8 siblings, even though, in truth, they formed the mechanical backbone of America's industrial strength. It wasn't by accident that the Chevy 292 and Ford 300 were never promoted as high-performance engines, despite being fully capable of it. Behind every technical decision was a carefully orchestrated strategy shaped in boardrooms, not workshops. Internal documents reveal that from the very beginning, both GM and Ford understood the true potential of these inline-sixes. But they also realized that if unleashed, these engines could threaten the sales of their premium V8 lines, where the big profits lived. Instead of boosting performance, engineers were instructed to focus on durability, heavy-duty reliability, and fuel efficiency, traits that wouldn't interfere with the V8 marketing narrative. Some prototypes of the 292 and 300 reached significantly higher output, but never made it past the pre-production phase. It was all part of a simple yet effective strategy: make them strong enough to work, but never strong enough to compete with the V8s. And in that game, two remarkable engines became pawns on a corporate chessboard of profit and prestige. On paper, both the Ford 300 and Chevy 292 are inline-six truck engines. But dig into the specs, and you'll uncover a fascinating duel between two very different engineering philosophies. In displacement, the Ford 300 edges out with 4.9 liters versus the Chevy 292's 4.8 liters. Ford's 3.98-inch bore and 4.0-inch stroke were engineered for low-end torque. Meanwhile, the Chevy's 3.76-inch bore and matching stroke allowed it to rev more freely when properly balanced. Ford used a 7-main bearing crankshaft, extremely durable under heavy load. Chevy opted for 4 mains, sacrificing some rigidity but enabling higher RPM potential when tuned. In terms of cylinder head design, Ford favored larger intake valves for better air draw, while Chevy focused on efficient exhaust flow, enhancing high RPM performance. Chevy's intake manifold was engineered to evenly distribute fuel-air mix to all 6 cylinders, a common challenge in EO6 layouts. Ford countered with a precisely tuned exhaust manifold to reduce back pressure through calculated runner lengths. Compression ratios for the 292 ranged from 7.8 to 1 to 8.5 to 1 depending on model year, while the Ford 300 held steady around 8.8 to 1 in its most efficient trims. In short, these were overbuilt industrial engines, done too well. And that's exactly why hot rodders began to see the hidden gold buried in all that cast iron, they found something even more valuable: near-immortal durability. The Ford 300 became legendary for routinely passing 500,000 miles in F-Series trucks with untouched internals. The Chevy 292 was right there too, with countless commercial units surpassing 400,000 miles without major issues. This resilience came from thoughtful design. Ford's oversized water jackets around the cylinders kept temps stable under stress. Chevy engineered an excellent oiling system, ensuring constant flow to high-wear areas like valves and camshafts. Industrial testing proved it. The Ford 300's crankshaft endured 40% over its rated load without failing, while the Chevy 292's connecting rods delivered fatigue, strength well beyond commercial duty norms. With durability this extreme, these engines should have evolved into performance legends. But that never happened. So the question is, why were engines with near-indestructible durability never allowed to show their full strength? The answer wasn't found on the shop floor, but buried in documents hidden for decades. A 1967 Ford technical memo revealed a prototype 300 producing 230 horsepower. Chevrolet's records showed the 292 reaching 210 horsepower during testing. Yet none of these configurations ever entered production. And it wasn't because engineers couldn't make it work, it was because they weren't allowed. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, American automakers bet big on V8s, loud, powerful, and expensive. Had the Ford 300 and Chevy 292 been fully unleashed, they would have disrupted that entire profit model. The result? Power ratings were capped. Innovative technologies, like Chevy's improved airflow head and Ford's variable cam timing, were scrapped before hitting the assembly line. One GM engineer even resigned after his 292nd head design, which increased airflow by 22%, was rejected without consideration. Though automakers tried to suppress them, the true potential of the Ford 300 and Chevy 292 was eventually discovered, not by factory engineers, but by underground gearheads. By the late 1970s, backyard builders and racers, especially in budget oval and endurance racing, began experimenting with these inline-sixes. With simple upgrades like cam swaps and intake tuning, they found 50 to 60 extra horsepower was easily within reach, without sacrificing durability. The Chevy 292 became a favorite in dirt track classes, where torque and toughness mattered more than outright speed. The Ford 300 found its niche in endurance events, where it ran lap after lap without ever quitting. One turbocharged 292-powered Chevy C10 reportedly clocked a 12.3-second quarter mile. A fuel-injected stripped-down Ford 300 build hit 13.1 seconds. No nitrous, just smart tuning. And as demand for performance builds grew, a new generation of hot rodders began pushing the Ford 300 and Chevy 292 beyond anything the factory had ever envisioned. At the forefront was Chuck Neaton, a seasoned mechanic and cylinder head wizard, hailed as the godfather of performance inline-sixes. He developed custom heads that drastically improved airflow. One naturally aspirated 292 build of his hit 315 horsepower on the dyno, leading GM to issue a cease and desist in 1983. The movement didn't stay in America. In Australia, the Ford 300 became a popular base for touring car builds, especially in the grueling Sydney-Melbourne endurance race, where a Falcon powered by it took podium finishes from 1985 to 1987. On local U.S. ovals, the 292 became a go-to choice for budget racers, thanks to strong torque, stable revs, and cheap parts. Properly tuned, these engines could scream at 6,000 RPM all season, without a rebuild. It was these real-world performance feats that finally brought the Ford 300 and Chevy 292 out of the shadows, not just as tools, but as mechanical legacies worth preserving. Since 2015, the Ford 300's market value has tripled, with clean or fully rebuilt examples fetching over $8,000. Meanwhile, NOS Chevy 292 blocks are highly sought after at specialty auctions, often selling for $5,000 or more. Modern tech has continued to unlock what Detroit once buried. EFI conversions, paired with standalone engine management systems, now deliver fuel efficiency and performance levels the original era could only dream of. Turbocharged Chevy 292 builds today can easily surpass 400 horsepower, while the Ford 300 remains a favorite for local pulling teams. Brutally strong, reliable, and efficient. More importantly, the community keeps growing. From niche i6-only forums to full-blown performance builds, the community has kept the Ford 300 and Chevy 292 alive in ways their manufacturers never imagined. And maybe that's the highest form of recognition. Surviving not through marketing, but through real-world value. The Ford 300 and Chevy 292 never starred in glossy ad campaigns. Yet they embodied a pure engineering ethos. Simple, durable, and effective enough to make automakers nervous. Once overlooked, they're now cherished, rebuilt, and celebrated. So now we ask, who was the true king in this battle? Leave your thoughts below. Ford 300, the timeless durability icon? Or Chevy 292, the quiet beast waiting to be unleashed? And if hidden engine history is your thing, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss what's coming next.